Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really critical, honestly life-saving balancing act, managing both internal facility safety and humane external wildlife control. Look, whether you run a local animal shelter, a busy veterinary clinic, or a massive rescue operation, the stakes here are incredibly high. You're constantly juggling the health and safety of your dedicated staff with the compassionate care of the animals inside, all while dealing with unpredictable wildlife right outside your doors.
Okay, let's get real for a second. Beneath the super cute exterior of our furry friends lies some very real and often hidden dangers of working in a highly active facility setting. We're talking about severe animal bites, exposure to some seriously potent zoonotic diseases, and dealing with heavy-duty chemical cleaning agents. These hazards are literally everywhere, and we absolutely need a structured way to tackle them.
To make this all make sense, we're taking an inside-out approach today. We'll cover building a safety foundation, protecting the protectors, navigating the chemical minefield, managing facility waste, and finally, humane wildlife exclusion.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Building a Safety Foundation.
We're starting our journey inside the facility, and the bedrock of everything we're talking about today is the OSHA General Duty Clause. Basically, this mandate dictates that employers have to proactively eliminate recognized hazards. You can't just sit around waiting for an accident to happen and then react to it. No way. If you run a facility, OSHA considers you the expert. It's your legal and honestly moral responsibility to hunt down those hazards, from slippery floors to aggressive dogs, and make sure your workplace is free from anything likely to cause serious physical harm.
So how do you actually eliminate these hazards? Well, OSHA requires you to follow a very specific three-step sequence. First up, you try engineering controls. This means physically getting rid of the hazard, like maybe installing a scavenging system for anesthetic gases or putting up sound baffles on the ceiling. If you just can't do that, you move to step 2, procedural controls. This is where you actually change how your staff does the work to minimize the risk. And only when those first 2 steps fail or just aren't enough, do you move to step 3, which is relying on personal protective equipment, or PPE, as your absolute final line of defense.
Moving right along to Section 2, Protecting the Protectors. You know, safeguarding your human workers really is the ultimate act of empathy. It's what allows them to confidently care for the animals day in and day out. When those engineering and procedural controls we just talked about aren't quite enough, you have to supply and strictly enforce the use of essential protective equipment. And we aren't just talking about a basic pair of latex gloves here. Your facility needs a full arsenal. We're talking N95 respirator masks for airborne stuff, heavy-duty neoprene rubber gloves, and Tyvek lab coats for chemical deep cleans. You need goggles, face shields, hearing protection, and even Kevlar vests for field staff to shield them from severe bites. Wearing this gear is not optional. It's a non-negotiable condition of employment for their own good.
Now, when you're dealing with severe biological or chemical hazards inside the facility, or maybe responding to a major disease outbreak, this is the reality of what proper protection actually looks like. You're looking at full-scale gear, meaning full-body Tyvek suits and heavy-duty respirators. It's intense, but absolutely crucial.
Let's switch gears and talk about a completely invisible hazard. 15. That is the maximum amount of time, just 15 minutes, an employee can safely spend in a typical 115 decibel dog kennel without wearing hearing protection during an 8-hour shift. That's it. The noise in a standard dog housing area is just incredibly intense. If you don't have engineering controls like sound-absorbent ceiling panels doing the heavy lifting for you, your staff absolutely 100% must be wearing comfortable, effective earplugs or earmuffs. Otherwise, you're looking at permanent, irreversible hearing damage.
Which brings us to Section 3, the chemical minefield.
Get this. The average animal shelter houses over 200 hazardous chemical products. Because there is just this massive volume of cleaning and medicating happening every single day, we have to talk about labeling. It's so vital to understand the difference between the manufacturer's primary label, the one that comes on the bulk bottle when you buy it, and the secondary labels you have to create. Think of secondary containers kind of like putting your dinner leftovers into Tupperware. When you transfer industrial bleach or heavy-duty disinfectants into smaller, easier-to-use spray bottles or buckets, OSHA mandates that those secondary containers must be meticulously labeled. They need the chemical name, the strength, and all the hazard warnings. No exceptions.
To actually decode the hazard warnings on those secondary containers, you can use these pre-designed color-coded identification systems. It's like a really important cheat sheet. The crucial point here is understanding the color map. Blue stands for health hazards, red alerts you to flammability, and yellow or orange indicates reactivity and physical hazards. There's a simple scale from 0 to 4 that tells your staff instantly exactly how dangerous the liquid inside that unmarked spray bottle really is, plus symbols showing them what protective gear they need to put on before they even think about pulling the trigger.
But hey, accidents happen, right? If something goes wrong in this chemical minefield and a splash occurs, OSHA requires an uninterrupted flow of tepid water that flushes both eyes simultaneously. That's exactly why faucet-mounted stations, like these OptiCleanse models, are highly recommended. You know those little handheld squeeze bottles you sometimes see on the wall? Yeah, those really don't cut it for chemical splashes. They only flush one eye at a time and they run out of water almost instantly. You need continuous, safe water pressure right there at the sink.
All right, moving on to Section 4, Managing Facility Waste.
Let's break down exactly what happens to all those materials, both hazardous and non-hazardous, once we're done with them. A busy animal facility's daily waste basically falls into 5 distinct slices of a pie. Now, general waste and normal animal waste, those can usually be handled with standard good sanitation practices, but we have to pay strict attention to the others. Chemical hazardous waste, biological hazardous waste, and sharps, like used syringe needles, require strictly regulated disposal plans. You've got to make sure your staff is protected from punctures and that you're fully complying with state health departments on exactly how biomedical waste leaves your building.
Of course, when chemicals or biological agents escape their containers, you've got a spill event on your hands. You need to quickly categorize the spill using a strict rubric like this one. A minor spill? One staff member can handle that with regular disposal. But a major spill of, say, 50 gallons? That requires a full-on emergency response team. And then consider a complex spill. This really illustrates how fast things can escalate. For example, a broken mercury thermometer gives you the physical hazard of broken glass, plus the severe chemical toxicity of mercury vapors. That requires highly specialized handling. The golden rule here? Always consult your materials safety data sheets before you ever attempt to clean up.
And that brings us to our final act, Section 5, Humane Wildlife Exclusion. So we're panning the camera from the highly controlled, sanitized interior of the facility to the wild, totally unpredictable exterior perimeter. We've mastered internal compliance, we've got our safety gear, our hazard labels, our spill kits. It's looking great. But we have to ask a crucial question. How do we protect this carefully controlled facility when curious, hungry, or nesting wildlife try to break in? Animals from the outside can bring in nasty diseases, damage property, or even threaten the animals you're sheltering inside.
The good news is, rather than using harmful methods to keep wildlife away, you can totally secure your perimeter using humane exclusion tools. It's amazing what's out there. You can install barrier spikes and netting to keep birds from roosting and creating huge messes. You can set up heavy-duty live traps for the safe relocation of raccoons or opossums. You can even use boundary fencing to keep deer out and protect your roof with solar panel exclusion kits. Honestly, it's all about proactively sealing off their paths of approach.
But what if you have a massive open area around your facility? Physical fencing just might not be enough, or practical. That is where acoustic dispersal systems come in. These things are wild. They're high-powered devices that transmit clear warnings and animal calls at up to 130 decibels to safely scatter wildlife over vast distances. So the big takeaway here is that you can effectively manage massive outdoor perimeters without harming a single animal. You just leverage humane acoustic technology to keep the local wildlife safe, sound, and out of your operational zones.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. As you go back and review your own hazard communication plans, update those secondary labels, or go check out your exterior fencing, ask yourself, does your facility's safety culture actually bridge the gap between strict OSHA compliance and humane animal care? Or is your team silently absorbing risks every single day? Protecting your human workers isn't just checking off a legal box. It is the very foundation that makes your life-saving work possible. Thanks so much for joining this explainer. Now it's time to go take a hard look at your facility from the inside out.